City. I'm Marcus Ali, I'm your host. And joining me from the To Hull and Back podcast to provide the insight is Ant Northgraves. How you doing, Ant?
I'm all right, mate. Are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Looking forward to getting into this one. But just before we do, if I could please ask you to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you would be so generous. If you haven't noticed, we are edging towards quite a big milestone on the channel, so any support is very much appreciated. So to begin then, Ant, we're going to have a little reflection on the 2021-22 campaign, the Tigers' first season in the Championship after, of course, winning the League One title in 2021, the season that's somehow known as the lockdown season under Grant McCann. A 19th place finish, I suppose you would have taken that at the start of the season. What was your assessment of it? Obviously struggling early on and then eventually sort of asserting yourself in the Championship. What was your overall feeling of the campaign as a whole?
I mean, every single City fan would have said, you know, the aim was to just stay in the league. So you'd have took 21st if it was offered. We were at a point where, you know, like obviously we started with a nice big 4-1 win away at Preston. And then when I think it was like 7 or 8 games without even scoring a goal. And it just seemed like it was deja vu again, similar to the kind of form we had under McCann in the Championship relegation we'd just had a couple of years before. But we looked like we might not have the minerals to stay in the division kind of thing, and fans were turning against the manager. And then we picked up form. You know, we switched systems. He went to a 3 at the back, which a lot of the fans were calling for. You know, gets the best out of players like Jacob Greaves and Deshaun Bernard at the time, who was on loan, and allows us to kind of have those progressive ball playing centre halves that like to bring it out from the back. And we got Keane Lewis Potter and Ryan Longman, who essentially are inverted strikers, but we're playing them as wing backs, and I think it caught people off guard. And we went on a good run, and it kind of brought us out of it a bit. And then we found ourselves back in bad form, and then another run of good form, and then we got a new manager. It was a bit of a topsy-turvy season, but like we say, we got 19th place. We stayed in the division. That's all we wanted to do.
So as you say, there were doubts over whether the Tigers were going to be able to stabilise in the second tier last season. Were you one of those fans that was hoping to see Grant McCann replaced earlier than he was?
Yes, yeah. I'll not hide and say that I didn't call for his head a couple of times, because I did. You know, I think the problem was we just believed that, you know, he didn't have sort of the tactical range needed to adapt to how difficult this league can be game by game. You know, he was very stubborn. He would play one system only, even if it wasn't working. He wouldn't change it. He'd play players who, you know, looked a bit under the weather and probably needed dropping kind of thing. And it just gets fans frustrated. And when you go on bad runs and then you're refusing to change things, you know, it does become a bit of a headache for people watching, and you just can't understand why it's happening kind of thing. But like we said, I mean, when you look back at it with hindsight, you know, given the hand he was dealt with the Alams, you know, they sold his best 2 players in his first season with us. And then, you know, we had COVID and everything. So in terms of finances and backing and investment, he didn't have it. We had an EFL embargo imposed on us, transfer embargo imposed on us by the EFL at the beginning of the Championship season. So we couldn't sign anybody for transfer fees. I believe it could only be frees or loans. So we couldn't really improve on the starting 11 we had, which showed, I think we signed about 7 or 8 players that summer, but none of them were immediate starters, which showed that they weren't improvements on what we had. So we knew we was in for a tough season because we just had a League One side. So, you know, when you look back at it in hindsight, we probably did a better job than what we realised at the time. But, you know, football's an emotional game and you react as and when it's happening, don't you?
Absolutely. So moving on, obviously, Shota Arveladze came in to replace Grant McCann. So somewhat of a controversial decision to dismiss him at the time that he was, but obviously a chance for the new ownership to sort of have their own appointment at that stage of the season. He picked up 22 points from 19 games at the end of the campaign, but taking you back to the appointment, obviously a manager that I don't think had managed in England before. What was your initial reaction when you heard that Arveladze was going to come in as the replacement?
It's a weird one because from the outside, it does look like that it was a harsh sacking because obviously we'd won a couple of good games on the bounce under McCann, and we looked like we'd sort of switched our form around. But realistically, the decision to replace McCann had been made months earlier. So when obviously our new owner was in talks with the Lambs about taking over, it was during the time where we weren't scoring goals and we were losing on the regular. So he was always going to install somebody else at the helm. We were well aware of that. I mean, realistically, people would have probably been happy to see McCann keep it to the end of the season, but then also went that angry that he was replaced at the time he was. It was one of those situations, realistically, was McCann going to be the kind of manager that's going to take us to the kind of places that Adjan Ilagella wanted to take us to? Not likely. So, the fact that we didn't know much about Shota other than obviously his record as an actual player, like up at Rangers and that, where he's heralded as a bit of a legend, but it's, we've taken gambles on foreign managers before. Sometimes you've got to. Marco Silva was another one of those. It was criticised, when we took the gamble of appointing him, and he turned out to be quite a good manager and almost kept us in the Premier League at a time where we looked dead and buried. So, sometimes these gambles pay off. Looking back at it now, it's probably good that he's had these extra few months as a Championship manager, so he's been able to experience the league, the kind of demands that it's got, how much he needs to change game by game, and what he needs to demand of his players. So, whereas if we'd have just hired him now, we're trying to bed in a new manager as well as however many signings we're going to make this summer. So it might be quite a slow start, but the fact he's been here is probably a big positive for us.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what Hull are like after a full pre-season under Arveladze. Obviously, it was quite a small sample size last season, given that there wasn't too much to play for, maybe the last 10 games of the season as well. Are you confident that Arveladze is the man to take Hull forward, or is the jury still out at this stage?
The jury is still out, but I think when you look back at our performances last season, it was more about making us hard to beat, incorporating his system. We can see the way he wants to play. He wants us to be very organised in defence, whilst also being able to be comfortable playing it out from the back. He just didn't have the standard of player to do it last season. So I think realistically, every fan was going to be like, we need to give him till obviously December next year when he's got the players that he wants to play the system that he's trying to incorporate. Last season was kind of a free hit for him because, the relationship between the fans and Grant McCann was kind of, it definitely broken down. He could have gone 5 or 6 unbeaten, and the moment he lost a game, the fans were on his back. So, it was one of them where it was best for all parties that they moved on. And then Shota has the chance now to come in and just kind of have a free hit, a clean slate to try and incorporate what he wanted to do for the rest of the season. Ended up staying up quite comfortably. We struggled to score goals, but that's been our issue the entire season. We didn't really have any goal scorers at the club. So yeah, I think this season we'll probably see what we're all about. We had a friendly against Leicester last night. We looked quite good in parts. I mean, if we lost 4-0, but it was one of those where the scoreline was very harsh. A couple of moments of magic from Leicester and a couple of lapses of concentration. But in terms of being in possession and trying to get out from the back and go forwards, we look very fluid. So yeah, I mean, he's managed to recruit some high-profile players too. So yeah, well, at least till December. I mean, jury's going to be out, but we'll see where we are.
Okay, so the transfer window and the upcoming season, I think, is definitely going to give an insight into what maybe the strategy is at board level more than we could maybe take in the second half of last season. Say that Hull are trending and performing a little bit better than they were at in the first half of last season, maybe sort of 10 points above the relegation zone, but not quite in touching distance with the top half. Do you think Arveladze will receive patience and sort of be given the season to implement his style of play, the way that he wants to do things? Or do you think there could be a little bit of impatience that Hull are really targeting a top half finish and potentially to ruffle some feathers in the top half?
It's a good question, actually, because it's a question I don't think I could answer with much confidence one way or the other, because Adjan's relatively new in owning a football club, so we don't know, what his approach is going to be when obviously things aren't going his way. He's got a clear plan that he's told us since day one. He wants us in the Premier League within 2 or 3 seasons. He's backed everything he's said so far. We're bringing in a much higher standard of player, international experience. We're looking progressively as a club going forwards now rather than, sort of stagnating like we have the last few years. So, but I think that the fact that he always knew that Shota was going to be the guy he installed as manager as soon as he took over the club would probably give him a bit of extra time in the bank. I think it depends what he determines as a successful season, because to me, if we was in and around the mid-table slots where, we've not really flirted with relegation at any stage, kind of playoff outsiders as a minimum, that's a successful season to me, because that's progression on last year, and it's given us a solid base to then build on that either in January or the summer. And I think realistically, if this is a few year plan, then he'll probably get the similar treatment from the owners as what we believe he's going to get, because it's not, he's not saying that we want to get promoted this season. So I mean, if we're going to be down in the lower echelons, about 18th down below around Christmas time, it'll be interesting to see what kind of pressure he puts on Arveladze. But I think if we're around mid-table and relatively comfortable, I think he'll be okay.
We'll definitely learn a lot about the new board and in judging their actions next season. But we're going to be talking about the new signings in the next section. So quite a lot of transfer business already at the MKM Stadium. The Tigers were fairly organised in getting their business done this summer window. I've picked out maybe 4 key signings that we'd like to focus on and additions that will definitely get the supporters excited. Going to start with what I would say is probably the headline addition. That's Jean-Michel Seri, the Ivorian, coming off the back of winning the championship title with Fulham last season. Obviously, it was a deal that sort of ebbed and flowed. There was a link quite early on in the transfer window. Then it seemed to cool down, and then all of a sudden he was pictured signing for the club. What did you make of this saga? It's a really exciting addition.
It's one of these signings that, if you'd have said in January that we'd be making these standard of signings in the summer, we'd have all laughed, because we've been used to trying to cherry pick free agents from League One and League Two the last few seasons. So to get an experienced Premier League, international, championship title winner on a free as well is a huge coup, especially for a club that finished 19th last season and is probably seen as quite unfashionable. It's up north, it's right out in the sticks. It's not somewhere like London where it's probably got a bit more pull. But yeah, Seri is the kind of player that, he's going to dictate games from the middle. He's got a good passing range. He's comfortable at controlling the game. If we're going to try and create more chances to score more goals this season, then he's definitely the kind of signing that we needed to be making. And it's a statement signing as well. I think sometimes every transfer window, you need to try and make a signing that makes the players that are already there kind of go, wow, we're going for it this year, because then it picks up their confidence levels, gets their motivation going, and probably ups their effort by, a few 10-20% from what they usually would do. So it can have a much larger impact on the dressing room too. And yeah, it's a very, very exciting signing to see Seri come here in Hull City colours. And like you say, yeah, the saga itself, it was, it was mentioned, and then it was like more or less officially confirmed by journalists out in the Turkish league. And then I think he said something about, because Tan Kesler, who's our director of football, he went on and did an interview on BBC Radio Umberside and said he's pretty confident he's going to sign. He's just waiting for his family to check out the local schools and things like that. And then it kind of went dead from that point. Reports, I think, of a club in Italy had offered him something, and, maybe he fancied Italy more than Hull, which I can't blame him, to be fair. And he ended up flying out there. And then you didn't hear anything from that point. And then all of a sudden it were back on. He was over in Hull and he was pictured in training gear. So I'm not quite sure how we managed to pull him back from where he went. Maybe offered him a little bit more or a bigger bonus or something. But yeah, we've got him in the end, and that's the important thing.
You talk about his ability to dictate play. For me, he was easily one of the classiest midfield players in the division last season. Does that sort of a player that's able to keep hold of possession and build attacks from deeper and forward and more advanced areas, would you say his sort of skill set suits the style that Arveladze is looking to play at Hull?
Oh, 100%, because he wants, especially now with the 3 at the back system, which we all thought he might have resorted to a 4 at the back, because he apparently prefers a 4-3-3. But he's confirmed that he's going to stick with a 3 at the back this season. It's what we've seen in friendlies so far. He wants us to be patient at the back, short passing style, try and build out if we can, hit it long as a last resort. And I think last season we didn't really have the players necessary to incorporate that. If a team pressed us high and kept us in our own half, we struggled to then get out of our half, and it made it difficult for us. But, like you say, someone like Seri, who's more than happy to come, 10 yards in front of the back 3 to collect the ball and get himself out of trouble. He's good at turning on a sixpence, so he can get himself out of trouble, and it helps us incorporate that style that Arveladze is really wanting us to play, and he's like we say, he's equally as effective coming and retaining possession from the back, but then also creating chances up at the other end. He just floats in the middle, finds space, is more than happy to play a long pass over the top or make a 1-2 to get himself some space there. And it's just, even watching him in the friendly last night, he makes things look effortless, barring the one mistake he made that led to the Leicester goal, the first one, where he didn't really check his surroundings. But that's just going to be, pre-season mistakes that always happens. But yeah, he's going to be crucial to the way we play this season, definitely.
I think definitely a standout signing in the window in the Championship. That even neutral fans will be looking forward to see how he fits into that side, what he looks like in the colours, and just how they build that midfield contingent around him. Moving on to another signing, this one at the top of the pitch, a free agent striker in the end. I believe it was Óscar Estupiñán, signing on a free transfer after an impressive season in the Portuguese top flight with Vitória Guimarães. I think it was 15 goals that he notched up in the league. Obviously, a player that not many people would have seen too much of, unless we got some Championship and Primeira Liga observers. But yeah, what was your initial reaction to this? Obviously, the stats look healthy. Do you think he's the type of player that Hull need?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is we just need somebody who knows where the goal is, because our only Achilles heel last season, arguably, was the fact that we can't score goals. The defense and the midfield seem to be okay for the most part, but we just didn't have a striker that could maybe score 10 or more in the season. I mean, Keane Lewis Potter was our top scorer, I think, with 12 goals, and he played in left wing back for the majority of the season. So if we'd have had a striker who, could get 10, 15 goals, we'd probably have been comfortably mid-table and not even spoke about relegation phase. So someone like this, who I think's got a strike record, I think he's got 75 goals in 200 appearances, someone mentioned. So he's nearing that 1 in 2, which in a career over 200 games is a pretty good record. And if he looks fast, he looks good in the air, he looks strong. So if he can hold the ball up and bring other players into it, and then also get on the end of crosses, it's giving us an extra prong to our attack that we didn't necessarily have last season. And especially with the pressing play at top, he's more than happy to press too, from what we've seen so far. It's an exciting signing. It's one of these because, most of the signings we've made, none of our fans have probably actually seen play. So it's hard to make a judgment on, but because you've only got the infamous YouTube videos to go off, the compilation videos where everyone looks like Lionel Messi. But it's exciting that we could potentially be signing somebody who, at this level, could score regular goals. So yeah, it's another one that we're going to have to wait and see where he is around December, January time. But the fact that we're going out there and actively trying to find people who are proven goal scorers is only an exciting prospect.
So moving on to two players that Hull have paid fees for. Firstly, Ozan Tufan, who comes in from Fenerbahce. A 27-year-old who I only realised in doing my research for this video has got 65 caps for Turkey by the age of 27, which is really respectable. Obviously had a loan spell at Watford last season. A lot of players weren't able to really hit the standards they would have liked to for the Hornets. Coming in to bolster that midfield contingent as well, along with Jean-Michel Seri. What did you make of the Tufan signing?
Yeah, I think realistically we were always going to sign one or two high-profile Turkish players, obviously with the owner coming in. He is a kind of player it's been given quite a bad rap from some of the Watford supporters we've spoken to. But when you read up on it, he's had quite he missed most of pre-season, so maybe his match sharpness and fitness wasn't quite at the levels that he needed to be at the Premier League. He was in a Watford team that struggled for the majority of the time in games, and it's hard to judge players based on that, especially when he's never played in the Premier League before. You're coming into a struggling side, it's always a big ask to make a real impact. But maybe the Championship's a good drop for him to kind of find his feet in the English game, create some chances, find that form, and hopefully if we're a Premier League team within a few years, he can be part of that. And like you say, the fact that we're replacing, maybe some players that we signed that were more League One, lower Championship standard with more experienced international players that have played against some of the best players on the planet, it's automatically updating the caliber of players you've got in your side. And this guy is going to be the kind of number 10, I think, that we've missed the last couple of seasons, where we're going to sort of give him more of a free rein to just roam and attack rather than having to come back and defend. So if he can create chances for the front three, I think we're going for this season, then the the more chances we create, the more goals we're going to score. So it's just that logic, isn't it? So yeah, it's another exciting signing that hopefully hits the ground running.
Yeah, definitely a really intriguing one. Going to be interesting to see how he fits into the side in those first couple of months in particular. The last player we're going to touch on is a player that I'm very excited about, to be honest, after seeing him in the second half of last season. I'm interested to know your thoughts on Sayyadmanesh. Came in on loan second half of last season. Now they've made the deal permanent. Still just 21 years old. Will likely be going to the World Cup with the Iran national team in the next few months. We happy to see this one made permanent. And what did you make of the performances of him in the second half of last season? There was potential in glimpses, but only just the one goal from 12 appearances in the end.
Yeah, the Iranian king. No, he came on loan last season and he got injured, I think, I believe his debut was against Derby away when we lost, and he got injured in that appearance and didn't really have chance to come in and make the impact that he wanted to. But then when he did find his way back into the squad, he gave us a different dimension that we'd not seen from any of the other players in the squad. He was quite happy playing anywhere amongst the front three, but he's got a kind of, like a kind of Adel Taarabt. I keep saying this. He reminds me of him. He's got that kind of arrogance on his game. He wants to take players on. As soon as he gets his ball, his first thought is forwards. He's got a bit of flair about him. He's more than happy to work hard, like the running he puts in off the ball, the pressing. Anything that a fan wants is for, at bare minimum, the player to run their socks off and just, leave everything on the pitch. And he does that. And for a young lad who's coming across to a country he's never played in before, it's very exciting because he's only going to get better the more he gets used to the league. And I think towards the end of last season, I remember the Reading game at home, the 3-0 win. He was an absolute menace for their back four, and they had a really torrid time against him. And if his end product improves slightly, because he does get himself into good positions, but then maybe the pass is slightly off or he takes too long to shoot kind of thing. But, he's young, he's going to learn that side of his game. So the fact that he gets to learn that with us now on a permanent basis is only a good thing, because where he could be in 2 or 3 years' time, his potential is limitless, really. So, yeah, very exciting.
Absolutely, yeah. Potentially a player for me who's one of those players going under the radar as someone to watch heading into next season. As you say, yeah, the numbers don't really back it up from the second half of last season, but yeah, seeing the performances which clearly you had, you could see the potential was there. We're going to be touching on some outgoing transfers next. So 2 outgoing deals to touch on here. Firstly, Keane Lewis Potter, the Hull City academy graduate, has made his big money move to Brentford in the Premier League. Potentially one where the writing was on the wall at some stage, but you must have been disappointed to see him go.
Yeah, you're always gutted to lose your best players, especially one who's a local lad, made his debut with the team as a teenager and has stuck with us through relegation, promotion, won a title with us. And he's one of these, and he's a young English lad. So, he gets probably a bit more hype about him than most would. But he's one who's improved his game every season that he's played so far. He's only had 2.5 years with us technically, but in League One, he still had a lot of his game that he needed to work on. But last year, he kind of, matured a bit, and he sort of said, you know what, I'm going to try and help this team survive by myself if I have to. He would sometimes single-handedly win us games. And to have that mentality as a youngster, it's a very, very good trait to have. And he's, like we say, he's only going to get better season by season. It was a saga similar to Jared Bowen. We had a player that we knew was far too good for this level, far too good for us, especially with the kind of level that we were at the time. And we knew it was only a matter of time that he was going to leave. I personally think he probably needed at least another season at this level to show some proper progression in his stats, maybe increase his output of assists. But, Brentford have taken that gamble on him. He had a year left in his contract. I think we had a year option, possibly. I'm not entirely sure on that. But, 16 million rising to 20. You can't really prevent him from going if he didn't want to go. He served us well. I hope he does well at Brentford. They're a good club that take youngsters and improve them. So, hopefully he gets the game time he needs whilst he's there. But it's kind of helped reinvest that money into our squad so we can improve this whole starting 11. So, we realistically knew we weren't going to hold on to him or he was going to take something special to hold on to him. But that money can go back into the squad and hopefully give us a team that's more than capable of challenging for the top 6 in either this season or in the years to come.
And the second outgoing that I wanted to focus on was one that came as something of a surprise to me. I don't know if there was signs that there was going to be a departure, but George Honeyman moving to Millwall. What did you make of this one? Seemed to be something of a talismanic figure at Hull over the last couple of seasons. Of course, was instrumental in that League One title win. Were you surprised to see him go?
Personally, I was. It did seem to come out of the blue. Like you say, he's been our most dependable, most consistent player in the last 2 seasons. League One campaign, he was amazing. I think he got like 14 assists. We really missed him at the beginning of the last season when he had an injury. And then when he came back into the side is when, coincidentally, we found our form again. So, if he had a bad game, we had a bad game. Our player tended to go through him. He ran his socks off. He was a midfield dynamo. He was box to box. He'd defend. He'd go back up the other end and try and create chances. And, he led by example. And it was exciting to have him alongside someone like Seri and Tufan this season. But then obviously the rumours appeared that he was going to go to Millwall, and more and more kind of leaks saying that, he wanted an improved deal from us, from the previous owners. What they offered him wasn't good enough. So then he came back to the new owners with the same proposal, and they didn't really improve on the terms or something. And he chose to play his career somewhere else. And, you don't want players that don't want to be part of the project, I suppose. Like we say, the thing with Honeyman, the thing that hurt me most with Honeyman going was we knew what we was going to get from him every game. He was at least a 7 or an 8 every single time he went on the pitch. And if we could have kept him and added to this quality of the squad like we have done, then our midfield would have been, very, very strong. At the moment, we've let him go and we don't quite know what these other players are going to offer us. So it's that safety net of knowing what the player can give you every single time they step on the pitch that was a bit of a blow for me, because he was one of our best players for the last 2 seasons. So obviously you don't want to see him go, but like I said, if you don't want to be here, then fair play. Good luck to him at Millwall, and hopefully he doesn't regret the move, and if we finish above him.
Yeah, definitely going to be one of the most interesting things to monitor, I think, is that sort of midfield rebuild and how it's going to change the way that Hull play going into the next season. We're going to look at some of their opening fixtures next. So Hull start the season with Bristol City at home and Preston North End away, an away day with very happy memories, of course, from last season. But 2 fixtures that stand alone that, just looking at them from the outside, look like opportunities to pick up points, where the following 6 after that, the difficulty seems to increase a lot, where maybe we're going to learn a lot more about how this whole side is really shaping up for the season. So just focusing in on those 2 beginning fixtures, Bristol City at home and then Preston North End away. How are you feeling going into them, and what sort of points total can you envisage the Tigers picking up from it?
The first 2 games, I think we want to be looking at getting at least 4 points. I think even like 2 points, drawing them both would be like, okay. Because I think the problem we've got this season, that we've added so many new players in, that there's going to be extra attention on our games and some sort of pressure, that outside pressure that maybe we've not had in the last few seasons. And I think it's important that we hit the ground running this season and have a good start, in order to give us, a good base to kind of try and push on when you inevitably find, a bad run at some point in the season, that you've got a good enough position to recover from it. You don't want to be chasing the rest of the pack. So 2 games like Bristol and Preston at home, I think Bristol, they beat us 5-0 at their ground last season, so it's not going to be an easy game by any stretch. But with the additions we made, we're a totally different side this season than we are last year. So hopefully, other sides are looking at us and going, "Oh, I don't quite fancy playing them this year." And to start off with a win at home, especially considering how poor we were at home last season, I think is a very important way to start this season. Turn a complete new leaf. This is it now. The new era started, and then maybe aim for at least a draw at Preston away, and then we're going into a difficult run of fixtures with a nice solid little point all at the beginning, where we're saying, this is the standard we want to set now, and go into these games with a little less pressure off and just be able to express ourselves. And like we say, if we come out of this stretch, I mean, you want to be playing the better sides early anyway, to kind of see what level you're at as a side. And hopefully we're at least in and around that mid-table section by the end of the first, 6-7 games, and we can really start looking forward to what could be quite a successful season.
Yeah, so just to rattle off those 6 matches after the initial 2, it's Norwich at home, Burnley away, West Bromwich Albion away, Coventry City at home, Queen's Park Rangers away, and Sheffield United at home. So definitely going to provide an insight into where exactly Hull are at, and of course focusing and hoping to maximise points in those initial 2 games. I'm going to be getting a league table prediction from Ant in the next section. So it's decision time. Hull City are looking promising in terms of their squad building heading into 2022-23. But is the proof going to be in the pudding? Where are they going to finish? And are the Tigers dark horses in the Championship for promotion?
I change my mind every single time someone asks me this question. It entirely depends on how quick this new set of players gel and form these partnerships and understanding. Which is why I think I sort of highlighted how important it is to get, off to a good start, especially because it stops players putting pressure on themselves too. I mean, realistically, I think we're going to be mid-table. I don't think we will be in the top 6. I think we've got the minerals to do it. Whether or not we've got the consistency to do it's yet to be seen. We need to see us play a few games first. But I'm going to put us in a nice, safe, maybe a 10th place, where we've flirted with playoffs for a bit, but ultimately fall short with a few games to go. But a successful season nonetheless, and something we can build on for summer next season and try and push on next year.
So there we have it. Ant Northgraves from the To Hull and Back podcast is going for a 10th place finish in the Championship for Hull City this season. Just to let you know, we have come to the end of the show, and I'm going to run through what is left to come on Football League World TV this afternoon and evening. At 4 o'clock, it's the Cardiff City Fans Voice. That's with Toby Wilding, your host, and he's going to be joined by Ben Johnsey. And then at 7:30 p.m, we've got the Wigan Fans Voice season preview. That's going to be hosted by Ned Holmes, and he's going to be joined by Adam Pendlebury. All that's left for me to say is that thank you very much for joining me, Ant. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.